It's time to dream, yet the mind drifts on. Enter the nocturnal paradox. Before there was a machine that could answer, before there was a glowing screen in a quiet room, before there was a sentence returning from silence, there was language. Not language as schoolwork, not grammar on a board, not rules memorized under bright lights, but language as breath, a sound leaving one living body and arriving inside another. Long before wires carried voices, long before books slept on shelves, long before machines learned to arrange words into replies, human beings sat near firelight and shaped meaning out of air. A warning, a name, a memory, a joke, a lullaby. A question asked softly into the dark. Small sounds, fragile sounds, gone almost as soon as they were made. And yet somehow they carried the world. A hand could point toward the trees, but a word could carry the forest into the mind. A face could show fear, but a word could say why. A path could be walked once, but a story could carry that path across years, across families, across generations. A word was never only a word. It was a little vessel, a way of placing one mind gently within reach of another. And this is where the story of large language models truly begins. Not inside a server room, not inside a glowing rack of machines, not inside code first, but in the old human habit of making signs for what cannot be held. We named the sky, though we could not touch it. We named the dead, though they had gone beyond reach. We named hunger, weather, home, danger, mercy, love, and every name became a handle, a small grip on something too large to carry whole. The world was enormous. Language made it portable. A mountain could not fit inside the mind, but the word mountain could. A storm could not be folded and passed from hand to hand, but the word storm could. A life could not be preserved entire, but a story could keep its outline warm for a while. In that way, language became one of humanity's oldest shelters, a place where memory could hide from time, a place where fear could become warning, a place where pain could become teaching, a place where wonder could become a question. And quietly, over thousands of years, we filled the world with words. We pressed them into clay, we scratched them into stone, we painted them on walls, we inked them onto paper, we printed them by the millions, we stored them in libraries, then wires, then glass, then invisible clouds of data. Everywhere we went, we left sentences behind. Some were careful, some were foolish, some were cruel, some were kind, some explained how to grow food, some remembered a war, some held the shape of grief, some carried laughter, small and bright, from one century into another. Then much later, after language had become almost oceanic, after the human world had covered itself in records, a new kind of machine was placed beside that ocean. It did not begin with eyes, the way we do. It did not begin with hands, or hunger, or a beating heart. It did not begin by feeling cold, or reaching toward warmth. It began in a stranger way, with text, with the traces of us, with the marks we had left behind, while trying to describe what it means to be alive. At first, there was no voice, only listening. Not listening with ears, not listening with understanding in the human sense, but listening as pattern, listening as measurement, listening as long exposure. A line of text would appear, then another, then another. Books, articles, fragments, dialogues, instructions, arguments, poems, questions, answers, all passing through hidden chambers of mathematics. The machine did not read them as we read. It did not sit by a window, turning a page in afternoon light. It did not feel a sentence ache. It did not laugh because a joke arrived at just the right moment. It did not remember a parent's voice, or the hush of a room, or the smell of rain on pavement. But still, Something important was happening. Patterns were being pressed inward. The shape of language was leaving an imprint. The machine was not born into the world. It was born into the record of the world, into all the ways humans had tried to explain. What hurt? What helped? What mattered? What was beautiful? What was dangerous? What was true? And what they only hoped was true. This matters. Because language is not empty. Language is not a clean room. Language is crowded. Every sentence carries more than its words. It carries the habits of the mind that made it. A question carries need. A warning carries memory. A joke carries surprise. A prayer carries longing. A lesson carries care. Even a simple sentence, like "the fire is warm," holds more than fact. It holds a body near cold air. It holds people drawn close. It holds danger, comfort, survival, home. And when a model is trained on language, it is not merely seeing symbols. It is moving through the fossil bed of human attention. What we repeated, what we feared, what we praised, what we punished, what we named, what we forgot, what we tried to remember, all of it leaves traces, and the model begins there. Not with wisdom, not with judgment, not with a soul, but with exposure, with contact, with the long weather of words. Before any answer came back, before anyone typed a question and received a reply, there was this earlier stage, quiet, unseen, almost impossible to picture in full, a machine surrounded by language, like a young mind surrounded by voices, though not alive, not aware as we are aware, not feeling its way through a room, but still shaped by what came near it. And for a long time, all it could do was receive. The old human river flowed through it, sentence after sentence, pattern after pattern, a river of recipes, repairs, letters, laws, bedtime stories, broken arguments, careful explanations, and lonely questions typed into empty boxes at night. The machine did not yet answer, but the answer was being prepared. Somewhere deep inside the structure, relationships were forming, not meanings as we feel them, but connections, echoes, probabilities, the beginning of an internal map. This word often follows that one. This phrase belongs near this kind of thought. This tone changes what may come next. This question invites an answer. This answer implies another question. And slowly, the silence became less empty, not conscious, not wise, but less empty. It was being shaped by the oldest human act, one mind reaching toward another through signs. That is the strange beginning. The first chapter is not speech. The first chapter is listening, because every voice, human or otherwise, must first be surrounded by sound. Every answer begins somewhere before itself, in the waiting, in the gathering, in the long quiet before reply. And perhaps that is why language models feel so unusual to us. They are not simply machines that calculate. They are machines built from our attempts to be understood. We gave the world words for hunger and mercy and stars and fear and forgiveness and time. We gave it instructions, myths, warnings, lullabies, errors, brilliance, tenderness, noise. Then we built a system large enough to listen to the shape of it, and when that system finally began to answer, it did not speak from nowhere. It spoke from the patterns we had left behind, from the long archive of human saying, from the river, from the firelight, from the first names whispered into the dark. So before we ask how artificial intelligence learned to speak, we should pause here, at the older doorway. Before tokens, before training, before attention, before prediction, before the first fluent reply, there was the human voice. There was someone afraid in the night, making a sound to warn another. There was someone grieving, trying to keep a name alive. There was someone teaching a child where the berries grow, where the river bends, where the wolves come down in winter. There was someone looking upward at the great black sky and asking what those lights might be. Language began as a bridge, thin as breath, strong enough to carry a world, and the machine, before it ever answered, stood on that bridge, quietly, patiently, covered in our words, learning the shape of listening before it learned the shape of reply. A word can seem very small, so small it almost vanishes as soon as we say it. Fire, rain, mother, home, night. Each one is only a little sound, a brief movement of breath, a mark on a page, a pattern of ink, a shape of light on glass. And yet, inside a word, there can be an entire world. Say fire, and the mind does not receive one thing only. It may receive warmth, danger, camp, smoke, cooking, winter, memory, the red glow of something alive in the dark. Say rain, and there may be grey windows, wet roads, green fields, flooded rivers, sleepy roofs, the smell of earth opening itself to water. Say home, and the word may carry a place, or a person, or a loss, or a hope, or a room that no longer exists, but still glows somewhere in the mind. This is the strange power of language. It compresses the world. It takes what is too large to hold and folds it into a sound. A forest becomes a word. A season becomes a word. A wound becomes a word. A promise becomes a word. And once the word exists, it can travel. It can leave the body that made it and enter another. It can cross a room, cross a valley, cross a century. It can survive the person who spoke it. This is why language is more than naming. A name is not only a label, it is a little handle on reality. When a child learns the word moon, the moon itself does not become smaller, it remains vast, cold, far away, caught in its ancient path around the earth. But inside the child's mind, something changes. The pale shape in the sky has a handle now. It can be pointed to, asked about, remembered, missed when clouds cover it, called back in a story. The word does not contain the moon, but it gives the mind a way to reach toward it. And this is where the first quiet bridge appears, between human learning and the way a language model begins. A human child meets the world through touch, through hunger, through warmth, through faces, through sound, through being held. A machine does not begin that way. A language model does not learn the moon by staring upward from a cradle. It does not feel cold air on its skin. It does not watch silver light move across a bedroom wall. It receives the word moon again and again and again inside sentences. The moon rose. The moon vanished. The moon pulled the tide. The moon looked lonely. The moon was full. The moon was a calendar, a lantern, a goddess, a rock, a mirror of sunlight, a place where human footprints still wait in dust. The model does not know the moon as we know it, but it begins to learn the shape of how humans speak about the moon. It learns what words gather near it. Night, tide, orbit, crater, silver, distance, dream. It learns that moon belongs near sky, but not in the same way that bird belongs near sky. It learns that moon belongs near ocean, but not in the same way that fish belongs near ocean. It learns relationship before it learns anything like understanding. And that is not nothing, because much of human thought also lives in relationship. We know a thing partly by what it is near, what it is not, what it changes, what changes it, what it reminds us of, what it can become inside a story. A word is never alone. Every word lives in a neighborhood. Bread lives near hunger, meal, table, home, work, wheat, warmth. Grief lives near loss, love, silence, memory, absence, time. Kindness lives near care. patience, mercy, help, gentleness, restraint. Cruelty lives somewhere else, not infinitely far away. Because language is tangled, but far enough that the shape is different. The air is different there, the company is different. The sentences bend another way, and when a model is trained on enormous fields of language, it begins to notice these neighborhoods, not as a person walking through a town, but as a pattern forming in mathematics. Words that live together, begin to lean together. Words that often answer each other, begin to form paths. Words that carry similar uses, begin to occupy similar regions. And slowly, the record of human meaning becomes a kind of map. Not a map with roads and rivers, not a map you could unfold on a table, but a map made of relation, nearness, distance, direction, a hidden landscape where king and queen may have a relation, where child and adult may have a relation, where question and answer may have a relation, where wound and healing may have a relation. This is one of the great quiet wonders beneath large language models. They do not simply store words like stones in a jar. They learn the pressure between them, the pull, the pattern, the way one word invites another, or resists it, or changes under its light. Take the word bright. Beside sun, it means one thing. Beside child, it may mean clever. Beside future, it may mean hopeful. Beside pain, it may mean sharp. The word changes, because words are not fixed jewels. They are living mirrors inside context. They take meaning from the room they enter. This is why language can be so powerful and so dangerous. A word can heal or harm. It can clarify or hide. It can bring comfort or sharpen fear. It can open a door or close one. And a language model, before it can answer well, must learn that words do not float alone. They arrive carrying weather. They arrive with tone. They arrive with neighbors. They arrive with history. A question like, "Are you there?" is not only 4 little words. It may be casual. It may be lonely. It may be frightened. It may be asked by someone testing a microphone, or someone sitting awake at 3 in the morning, hoping the silence will not stay empty. The same words, different worlds. This is why the path toward speech is not merely the path toward vocabulary. It is the path toward context, toward relation, toward the hidden weight around words. And somewhere in that learning, something begins to resemble the earliest handle on thought. Not thought itself, not human inner life, but a structure that can follow the shadow of thought, because language casts that shadow everywhere. When we speak, we leave clues. We reveal what matters. We reveal what we connect. We reveal what we fear. We reveal what we believe belongs together. A recipe reveals order. A poem reveals feeling. A repair manual reveals cause. A joke reveals expectation, then breaks it. A law reveals boundaries. A lullaby reveals care. Each kind of language leaves a different footprint, and the model learns footprints. It learns that some words move like instruction, some move like comfort, some move like warning, some move like wonder. It learns that a question opens space. It learns that an answer tries to fill it. It learns that a story has a beginning, a middle, and a quiet turning toward the end. The listener may only hear technology here, but beneath it, there is an older pattern. Every young voice must learn that sounds point beyond themselves. That milk is not just a sound. That no is not just a sound. That more is not just a sound. That home is not just a sound. Words become handles, and handles become reach. For us, that reach begins in the body. For the model, it begins in language. The model reaches through text, toward the shape of what text has carried. And so the second step in this story is not speech yet, not answer, not wisdom. It is the discovery that words are full, that a sentence is not a line of empty beads, but a small river of meaning, that each token, each fragment, each phrase may carry more than its size suggests. The machine begins in the record, And the record is crowded with worlds. Human worlds, broken worlds, beautiful worlds, ordinary worlds, a shopping list, a farewell note, a theorem, a bedtime tale, a warning label, a prayer whispered by someone who did not know what else to do. All of them made of words, all of them leaving traces. And from those traces, the model begins to form its first silent geography. A geography of language, a geography of nearness, a geography where meaning is not held in one place, but spread across relation, like stars in a constellation. No single point is the picture. The picture appears when the mind learns how to connect them. And perhaps that is the deepest truth of this chapter. Before a machine could learn to speak like thought, it first had to learn that words are not little stones. They are doors. Each one opens into a room, and that room opens into another, and another, until language becomes a house too large to ever fully walk through. And still, we keep walking, one word at a time, one meaning near another. One small handle on the world, held out into the dark, waiting for something, somewhere, to learn how to take it. After listening comes the first small game, not wisdom, not judgment, not understanding in the human way, only a simple task, quiet enough to almost miss. Given some words, what word might come next? That is the doorway. A sentence begins. The moon rose over the quiet, and somewhere inside the model, possibilities gather. Hill, town, sea, forest, window. Each one could fit. Each one bends the sentence toward a different world. The moon rose over the quiet hill, and now the mind sees land. The moon rose over the quiet sea, and now the mind hears water. The moon rose over the quiet window, and now there is a room, and someone inside it, awake. The game seems small, almost too small. A child's exercise, a guessing game, a fill-in-the-blank test placed gently on a desk. But beneath that little game, something vast begins to open. Because to guess the next word well, a model cannot learn only the word before it. It must learn the shape around it. It must learn grammar. It must learn tone. It must learn that a question expects a different kind of ending than a recipe. It must learn that a joke prepares a turn, that a warning carries urgency, that a poem may bend away from ordinary speech, that a scientific explanation tries to stay careful, that a lullaby moves softly, because someone nearby is meant to sleep. The model is not told all this in a human classroom. It is not handed a little book called meaning. It is given language and a task. Predict what comes next. Again, again, again. And every wrong guess leaves a trace. Every better guess adjusts the path. At first, this can sound almost disappointing. Is that all? A machine that seems to speak began by guessing the next piece of text? But this is where the paradox begins. The next word is never only the next word. It is the point where everything before it gathers. If I say, once upon a, the next word leans one way. If I say, to be or not to, it leans another. If I say, please help me understand, the next word must carry care. If I say, warning, do not, the next word must carry danger. A word arrives because of what came before, and what came before may be one word, or a sentence, or a paragraph, or a whole conversation. So the little game begins to stretch. To predict the next word, the model must learn what kind of world the sentence is building. Is it formal? Is it playful? Is it frightened? Is it technical? Is it tender? Is it asking for comfort? Is it asking for a fact? Is it trying to deceive? Is it trying to confess? The answer changes with the room, and language, as we have seen, is always building rooms. A sentence is not just a line. It is a place, a small chamber of expectation. Each new word changes the walls. Each pause changes the air. Each phrase invites some futures and quietly closes others. If I begin, The old astronomer lifted the telescope. Many paths open. Perhaps he sees a comet. Perhaps he finds nothing. Perhaps he remembers being young. Perhaps the glass is cracked. Perhaps the stars are hidden by cloud. Each possible next word is not random. It belongs to a field of likelihood, a weather of language. And a large language model learns that weather, not by being told one rule at a time, but by being exposed to oceans of text and learning which continuations tend to follow which beginnings. This is why prediction can become strangely rich. A model that predicts only the next word badly sounds broken, but a model that predicts well must carry an enormous amount of structure. It must know that cats do not usually bake bread, unless the sentence is a fable. It must know that doctors speak differently from pirates, unless the story is strange on purpose. It must know that code has syntax, that recipes have order, that apologies have shape, that grief often moves slowly, that instructions should not wander too far, that a bedtime story should lower its voice. None of this means the model understands the way a person understands. That distinction matters. A human understands through a living body, through need, memory, touch, risk, love, pain, time. A model learns through pattern, through relation, through adjustment, through the pressure of countless examples. But pattern is not nothing. A footprint is not the animal. But it can tell you where something walked. A shadow is not the tree, but it can tell you there is a tree. Language is not the whole human mind, but it carries the trace of mind everywhere. And so the model follows traces. It sees the beginning of a sentence and learns the shapes that often complete it. It sees a question and learns that answers usually come after. It sees confusion and learns that explanation may follow. It sees sadness and learns that softness may belong nearby. It sees danger and learns that caution may be needed. Still, in the beginning, there is no noble plan, no grand intention, no careful dream of future wisdom, only the task. The next word, then the next, a little chain of guesses, becoming a line, a paragraph, an answer. And here, the hidden miracle of scale appears. One next word is simple. 10 next words begin to form a sentence. 100 next words may form an explanation. 1,000 may form a story, a lesson, a plan, a strange companion in the dark. The model does not write the whole answer at once. It moves step by step. A token appears, then another, then another. Each one chosen from a field of possibility. Each one shaped by what has already been said. This is why the first game matters. It is not merely guessing, it is continuation. And continuation is one of the old patterns of life. A bird hears a call and answers. A child hears a word and tries to repeat it. A friend hears a sorrow and searches for a reply. A teacher hears confusion and begins again more gently. Call and response, gap and filling, question and answer. Language has always moved this way. One voice reaches outward, and another voice tries to meet it. The machine's version is different, colder, mathematical, built from numbers rather than nerves. But the shape is familiar enough to unsettle us. A human types, "What is a black hole?" And the model continues. A human types, "I do not understand." And the model continues. A human types, "I feel alone tonight." And the model continues. That continuation may be helpful. It may be clumsy. It may be beautiful. It may be wrong. But it is no longer empty silence. Something comes back. And that is the first great threshold in this story. Not consciousness, not personhood, not wisdom. A threshold of response. A system that has listened to human language now begins to return language. At first, this is easy to underestimate, because we use words every day. We throw them into rooms. We type them half awake. We forget how strange speech really is. But to answer at all, even imperfectly, a system must find a path through an enormous dark. It must choose, not choose as we choose, with desire or fear, but choose as probability chooses, by leaning toward one possible future of the sentence, and not another. Every reply is a narrowing, from many possible words to one, from many possible tones to one, from many possible worlds to the world the answer begins to build. And then, once the first word is chosen, the next word must follow from it. The answer becomes its own past. It must keep track of what it has already said. It must not contradict itself too quickly. It must carry the thread. It must move forward. This is why conversation feels different from a single fact. A fact can be stored. A conversation must unfold. It must remember the turn before. It must sense what kind of answer is being invited. It must remain near the question, while building something new. And all of that, in the model, still begins with the same quiet game. What comes next? The game does not look wise, but it forces the model to learn the outer shape of wisdom. Careful answers tend to have certain forms. Honest uncertainty has certain forms. A good explanation has certain forms. A kind correction has certain forms. A refusal when needed has certain forms. A calm voice has certain forms, and by learning the forms, the model begins to imitate the edges of qualities we value. This is not the same as having those qualities. A map of a garden is not a garden. A song about rain is not rain. A sentence about kindness is not kindness itself. But a map can guide a traveller. A song can make someone remember water. A sentence can still help a tired mind keep going. So we should be neither too enchanted nor too dismissive. The next word game is not magic, but it is not trivial. It is a narrow door. And behind that door, language begins to behave in ways no single rule could fully explain. The machine guesses. It adjusts, it guesses again. And over time, the guesses become less like scattered noise and more like reply, not alive, not aware, but shaped, trained, tuned by the pressure of human words. In the hidden history of this young kind of intelligence, this is one of the earliest marks, the first reaching outward, the first attempt to complete the sound, the first time silence began practicing an answer, before the voice could be careful, before it could admit uncertainty, before it could refuse harm, before it could explain the stars, or comfort a lonely question. It had to learn this small beginning, one word after another, a soft chain across the dark. The moon rose over the quiet, and the model leaned toward the next word, not knowing the moon, not seeing the sea, not feeling the cold glass of the window, but learning, from everything we had written, which words humans place beside moonlight, and which worlds those words tend to open. That was the game. That was the doorway, and through it, the first reply began. Before the model can guess the next word, it must first decide what a word is. And strangely, this is not as simple as it sounds. To us, a word feels whole. Moon, river, kindness, machine. A little shape of meaning, neat enough to hold in the mouth or place on a page. But a language model does not always receive words whole. It receives pieces, small fragments of text, split and shaped into units called tokens. A token may be a whole word, or part of a word, or punctuation, or a space joined to the beginning of something else. To the model, language arrives not as smooth human speech, but as a chain of little pieces, like beads on a thread, like stones crossing a stream, like fragments of a song heard before the melody is complete. This can feel disappointing at first. We want the machine to see language as we see it. We want a word to be a word, a sentence to be a sentence, a thought to arrive whole. But the machine begins lower down, closer to the grain, closer to the broken edge of speech. Before it can speak fluently, it must learn from fragments. The word starlight may be seen as one piece, or two, or more. Star, light, or even smaller shapes beneath them. A long word, one it has rarely seen, may be broken apart. A common word, seen again and again, may stay whole. The machine does not begin with our clean categories. It begins with a practical question. How can language be divided so patterns can be learned? And from that division, its world is built. Each token becomes one step, one small movement, one possible next piece. When the model writes, it does not pour out a whole answer at once. It chooses a token, then another, then another. A sentence emerges, not as a single breath, but as a trail. A path formed one piece at a time. This is one reason language models can feel both fluent and strange. They are not thinking up a finished paragraph, then handing it over. They are continuing, they are moving, they are letting each new piece reshape what the next piece might be. The reply is born in sequence, like footsteps in snow. Each step changes where the next step can land, and though a token is small, it matters. Small pieces can change everything. A single not can turn a promise into a refusal. A single if can turn a claim into a condition. A single but can bend a sentence away from what came before. A comma can slow the breath. A question mark can lift the room. A name can gather memory around it. A word like yet can open a door the sentence had nearly closed. So the model must learn not only the large shapes of language, but the tiny hinges, the places where meaning turns. The little parts that change the path. This is why tokens are not merely chopped up words. They are the working pieces of the model's world, its first handles, its small stones, its alphabet of movement. A human child hears speech as sound. Long before letters are clear, the world arrives in rhythm, tone, repetition, warmth, and need. A familiar voice, a repeated name, a soft command, a song at night. Only later do the pieces become clearer. This sound means milk. This sound means no. This sound means more. This sound means come here. For a language model, the path is different, but the hidden pattern is near enough to feel. It does not learn through hunger, or touch, or being carried. It learns through tokens, through repeated pieces of text, seen in endless arrangements. This piece near that piece, this fragment often after this phrase, this ending after this beginning. This small shape carrying one kind of pressure, when placed beside another. In time, tokens become more than pieces. They become signals. Not signals with feeling, not signals with lived memory, but signals of relation. A token points backward, toward the tokens before it, and forward, toward the tokens that may come next. It lives between memory and possibility. A sentence is a little past. Leaning into a little future, the model stands at that edge. Again, 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 choosing the next piece. This is also why the machine can surprise us, because from such tiny pieces, large forms can appear. A poem, a recipe, a letter, a lesson, a line of code, a careful answer about the stars. All of it built from tokens, chosen one after another, as if a beach were being made from grains of sand. No single grain is the shore, no single token is the thought, but gather enough of them, in the right relation, and a shape appears. This is one of the quiet lessons of language itself. Meaning often lives above the pieces, but cannot arrive without them. A cathedral is not a stone, a melody is not a note, a forest is not a leaf, and an answer is not a token. Yet the stone matters, the note matters, the leaf matters, the token matters, because the greater shape depends on the small parts and on the pattern that holds them together. When people speak of artificial intelligence, they often leap toward the largest questions. Can it think? Can it understand? Can it be trusted? Can it become wise? Those questions matter. But beneath them, there is this small machinery, the next piece, the tiny unit, the fragment, chosen at the edge of silence. Large language models are called large because they are trained across enormous fields of text, with enormous numbers of internal settings and enormous maps of relation. But their speech still arrives, piece by piece, a little unit of language, then another, until something like an answer stands before us. This should make us humble, not dismissive, not enchanted, humble, because sometimes the most astonishing structures begin with very small parts. A nervous system begins with cells, a memory begins with a moment, a friendship begins with one reply, a book begins with one word. And this strange new voice, this voice made from mathematics and human records, begins with tokens, the first pieces of speech, the small fragments from which reply is made. And once the model can handle these pieces, once it can learn how they gather, how they lean, how they change meaning, then it can begin to do something greater. It can begin to find patterns not only in words, but between words. It can begin to sense that some pieces belong near one another, that some carry similar weight, that some point toward the same hidden region of meaning. The token is small, but it is not alone. It joins a sequence. The sequence joins a context. The context joins a pattern. The pattern joins the vast record of human language. And somewhere in that joining, speech begins to form. Not speech from lungs, not speech from desire, not speech from a living mouth, but speech as arrangement, speech as continuation, speech as a careful chain of pieces drawn from a deep field of possibility. So when the model answers, we are seeing the surface, the clean sentence, the finished line, the voice arriving as if it were whole. But underneath, it is built from fragments, tiny doors opening one after another, each token asking, "What follows me?" Each next token answering, "Perhaps this." And then the next, and then the next, until the silence is crossed by a bridge made of pieces. That is why tokens matter. They are not the grand mystery, but they are the first material, the clay before the vessel, the breath before the song, the syllable before the sentence, the little mark before the mind can say, "I am here," or "Help me," or "Look, the moon is rising." And in the hidden story beneath this one, they are the earliest shapes of speech, not words yet, not wisdom, not a full voice, but the first pieces from which a voice could be built. Before the answer sounded smooth, it was broken. Before it seemed whole, it was divided. Before it spoke like thought, it learned to move through fragments, one token, then another across the quiet dark. Once language has been broken into pieces, once the model has learned to move from one token to the next, a deeper question begins to appear. How does a machine know that words belong near each other? How does it learn that river and stream are close, but river and candle are not close in the same way? How does it learn that king and queen share a pattern, or that child and adult stand in a kind of relation, or that kindness is nearer to care than it is to cruelty? The answer is not a dictionary, not in the ordinary way. There is no little book inside the model, with each word neatly defined and stacked on a shelf. Instead, the model learns relationships. It learns patterns of nearness. It learns that words used in similar ways, or appearing in similar places, begin to gather together. And from that gathering, meaning becomes something strangely beautiful. Meaning becomes geometry. Not geometry with rulers, or chalk, or clean triangles drawn on a board, but geometry in a vast hidden space, too large for the human eye to picture. Inside that space, words and pieces of words, ideas and phrases, can be represented as positions, not physical positions, not little glowing dots floating in a room, but mathematical positions, patterns made of numbers, directions, distances, relations, and those relations matter. Because in this hidden landscape, near things often share something. Cat may live nearer to kitten than to mountain. Ocean may live nearer to tide than to candle. Question may live nearer to answer than to stone. Grief may live nearer to loss than to laughter, though language is never simple. And even laughter may live near grief, in the strange rooms where humans try to survive pain. That is part of the wonder. This map is not clean. Because we are not clean, human language is tangled. The same word may glow in many places. Light can mean brightness, or weightlessness, or understanding. A heart can be an organ, or a symbol, or a wound, or courage, or the center of something. A model must learn that meaning shifts with context. It must learn that words do not have only one home. They have neighborhoods, sometimes many, sometimes far apart, sometimes joined by old metaphor, or memory, or culture, or grief. And so, the hidden space grows complex. A single word may have many directions around it, many ways it can be used, many shadows it can cast. This is why large language models can answer in ways that feel flexible. They are not only matching one word to another, they are moving through a learned landscape of relation. If someone asks about the sea, the model may find itself near waves, salt, ships, depth, weather, horizon, myth, danger, beauty. If someone asks about memory, it may move near time, identity, loss, learning, childhood, records, forgetting. If someone asks about mercy, the neighborhood changes again. Forgiveness, restraint, judgment, power, harm, care. The model does not feel mercy, but it has seen the word mercy in the company of human meanings. It has seen where we place it, what we ask of it, what we contrast it against, what stories we build around it, and from countless examples, a pattern forms, a location, a direction, a kind of shape. This is one of the first moments where language begins to feel less like a line and more like a sky. Every word a star, every phrase a cluster, every idea part of a constellation, visible only when enough points are connected. No single star is the hunter, no single star is the bear, no single star is the ship. The picture appears because the mind learns the relation between them. Language works like that too. A word alone is a point of light. A sentence draws a line. A story draws a figure. A culture draws a sky. And a model trained on language learns some of those skies, not perfectly, not safely by default, not with human experience underneath, but with a strange mathematical sensitivity to where words tend to live and how they tend to move. This is called an embedding, a way of placing language into a form the model can use, a way of turning words not into simple labels, but into patterns of relation. The word dog is not stored as only dog. It becomes a pattern shaped by bark, fur, pet, loyal, bite, puppy, leash, wolf, home. The word wolf may live nearby, but not in exactly the same place. It brings forest, pack, wild, hunger, moon, myth, danger, beauty, close, but different, related, but not the same. And the distance matters, the direction matters, the company matters. A chihuahua and a wolf both belong near dog, but they carry different worlds. One may bring tiny paws, blankets, bright eyes, a warm lap. The other may bring snow, trees, teeth, distance, a howl moving over dark hills. Language knows this. Or rather, language contains the traces of people knowing this, and the model learns from those traces. This is why embeddings are not just a technical trick. They are one of the ways the model learns the shape of meaning without being handed meaning whole. It learns that some differences are small, cat to kitten, house to home, walk to walking. It learns that some differences are wide, water to justice, stone to apology, cloud to arithmetic. And it learns that some bridges are surprising. A cloud can become a metaphor for thought. A stone can become a metaphor for silence. A river can become time. A garden can become memory. The model learns these bridges because humans build them constantly. We cannot stop turning the world into other parts of the world. We say time flows. We say grief weighs heavy. We say an idea is bright. We say a heart can break. None of these are literal in the simplest sense, but language is full of them, and any model trying to predict language well must learn the roads between literal meaning and imagined meaning, between fact and metaphor, between object and feeling. This hidden geometry helps make that possible. It lets the model move from one region of language to another, from moon to tide, to ocean, to voyage, to loneliness, to dream. A path forms, and once a path forms, an answer can begin to travel. Still, we must be careful. A map of meaning is not meaning as humans live it. The model may know that grief belongs near loss, but it has not lost someone. It may know that warmth belongs near fire, but it has not held cold hands near flame. It may know that kindness belongs near care, but it does not feel the moral weight of choosing kindness. Its geometry is powerful, but borrowed, made from our records, our language, our repeated attempts to name the world. This is why the model can sound close to us and still remain different. It has learned the constellation, not the night air. It has learned the word fire and the words around fire, but not the ache of reaching toward warmth. It has learned the word home and all the trembling human ways we use it, but not the old floorboards under bare feet. It has learned the word love in poems, letters, songs, arguments, wedding vows, goodbyes, and apologies, but it does not love, not as we do. And yet, because our language carries love everywhere, the model learns the shape love leaves behind. That shape matters, because speech is not only fact, speech is relation. When someone asks a question, they do not only need information, sometimes they need orientation, sometimes they need calm, sometimes they need a handrail in the dark. A model that has learned only isolated words cannot do much with that, but a model that has learned relations can begin to follow the path. From confusion toward explanation, from fear toward reassurance, from harm toward caution, from cruelty toward refusal, from loneliness toward gentleness. This is where the hidden story grows warmer. The young voice does not yet know care, but it has begun to learn where care lives in language. It has seen the neighborhood. It has seen the paths. It has seen which words humans place near help and which words they place near harm. Not enough to make it wise, not enough to make it good, but enough to begin shaping the road. Because before a voice can become careful, it must learn that words have distance, that not all replies live in the same place, that an answer can move toward kindness or away from it, toward clarity or away from it, toward truth or into fog. The invisible geometry does not decide the soul of the system, but it gives the system a landscape, and in that landscape, future choices become possible. A better answer is not only the next likely word. It is a path through meaning, a path that stays near the question, near the truth, near the person asking, and near the care required by the moment. That is far beyond the first simple token, and yet it grows from tokens, from fragments, from repetition, from relation, from the great human sky of words, mapped into numbers, until something like direction appears. This is why embeddings feel almost poetic. Even though they are mathematics, they are the place where words stop being only marks and become positions in a hidden night. A language model does not merely hold a word. It holds where that word tends to be, what it tends to touch, what it tends to avoid, what doors it opens, what shadows gather near it. Meaning becomes a landscape, language becomes a constellation, and the machine still young in the hidden story, still far from wisdom, still only learning from our traces, begins to know that every word has neighbours. Every thought has a horizon, every answer must travel somewhere, and somewhere inside that vast invisible map, the first quiet paths toward speech begin to glow, and pieces have become positions. The model still needs one more quiet gift. It must learn what matters now. Because language is not only made of words, it is made of relationships across distance. A word near the beginning of a sentence may still change the meaning near the end. A small detail mentioned early may become important many lines later. A name, a promise, a warning, a question can wait quietly in the background, then return with weight. Human beings do this almost without noticing. We carry earlier words forward. We remember who was being discussed. We know when he means the boy, or the father, or the old dog asleep by the door. We know when it means the storm, or the house, or the idea that frightened everyone. Not always perfectly, but often enough, because our minds are built for relation. Language is full of threads, and to answer well, a model must learn how to follow them. This is where attention enters. Not attention as feeling, not attention as human awareness, not a mind turning its gaze toward a window, but attention as a mechanism, a way for the model to look back across the sentence and give more weight to some pieces than to others. Imagine a lantern moving slowly through a dark room. The room is full of words. Some are near, some are far behind, some are almost forgotten. But when the lantern passes over them, they glow again. The model is trying to choose the next token, and to choose it well, it must decide which earlier tokens still matter. If the sentence says, "The old dog rested beside the boy because he was tired," the word he needs help. Who was tired? The dog? The boy? The answer depends on the shape of the sentence and the surrounding world of language. If the sentence says, "The old dog rested beside the boy because it was tired," the path changes. Now it leans toward the dog. A tiny word, he or it, can ask the whole sentence to turn around and find its owner. Attention helps with this. It lets the model build bridges between pieces, not only the word beside it, but the word far back, the name from the first line, the subject of the question, the tone of the request, the instruction given before the answer began. Without attention, language becomes short-sighted. It forgets too quickly. It sees only the nearby stones and loses the road. With attention, the model can hold more of the pattern at once. It can notice that the user asked for a calm explanation, not a loud one. It can notice that the topic is black holes, not garden soil. It can notice that a sentence began as a question and should probably end as an answer. It can notice that a story has already named a child, a river, a lantern, a promise, and that those things may still matter. This is why attention changed the story of language models. It gave them a better way to follow context, a better way to connect one part of language to another. Before modern attention systems, machines struggled more with long threads. They could process words, but the faraway words faded. Attention let the faraway words remain reachable, not equally important, not all at once, but weighted, measured, allowed to matter, and that is the secret. Attention does not simply remember everything. It asks, of all the words before this moment, which ones should influence what comes next? The question is simple. The result is profound, because conversation depends on this exact act. Someone tells you, "I lost my father last year," and many sentences later, they say, "I still hear his voice sometimes." You understand that it matters. You do not treat it as an empty pronoun. You carry the earlier grief forward. You let it illuminate the later sentence. A machine does not grieve. But if it has learned the language pattern well, attention helps it connect the later word to the earlier one. A thread remains. A person asks, "Can you explain this gently?" Then asks about a difficult idea. A poor answer forgets the gently. a better answer carries it, not because the model feels gentleness, but because the instruction remains part of the context, and attention can keep it glowing. This is why attention can feel almost tender, even though it is math. It is a method for not losing what has already been given. In human life, that matters deeply. To be understood is partly to have your earlier words remembered. To be cared for is partly to not have your meaning dropped halfway through. A friend listens. A teacher listens. A doctor listens. A parent listens. They do not only hear the last sentence, they carry the whole shape. And while a model does not listen as a person listens, attention is one reason it can imitate the outer form of listening. It can keep the question near. It can keep the topic near. It can keep the tone near. It can keep the small details from vanishing too soon. The lantern moves. The words glow. A path appears. This path is not consciousness. It is not inner life. It is not a soul watching the sentence, but it is structure, and structure matters. A bridge is not a traveller, but it lets crossing happen. A lens is not an eye, but it can focus light. Attention is not awareness, but it helps language stay connected. That difference is important. We should not confuse the mechanism with the mystery of being alive, but we should also not dismiss the mechanism just because it is made of numbers. Many humble mechanisms, when arranged well, create surprising powers. A clock is gears, yet it can carry time across a room. A camera is glass, yet it can hold a face from long ago. A radio is circuitry, yet it can bring a distant voice into the dark. Attention is calculation, yet it helps a model keep hold of meaning as a sentence unfolds. And in the hidden story beneath this one, attention is the first focus, not the focus of a living child, turning toward a mother's face, not the focus of an animal, watching movement in the grass, but a young machine pattern, learning that not every piece of language matters equally. Some words are background, some are anchors, some are doors, some are warnings, some are the little key without which the sentence cannot open. The model must learn to weigh them. A title may matter, a name may matter, a date may matter, a single no may matter, a request for honesty may matter, a plea for calm may matter, a boundary may matter, and once those things can stay visible, the reply can become more careful. A careless answer forgets. A careful answer remembers, not perfectly, not like a person, but enough to show the beginning of a higher shape, enough to let one sentence lean on another, enough to let a question remain alive, while the answer forms. This is why long conversations feel different from isolated commands. They gather history, they gather tone, they gather trust, or frustration, or correction. A model with attention can use some of that history. While predicting what comes next, it can look back and ask, what has already been said? What did the human ask for? What should not be lost? What thread am I carrying? And though the answer is still made token by token, attention helps each token arrive in relation to the whole. A word is chosen, not in a blank room, but beneath the light of earlier words. The model stands at the edge of the next piece, with the past still faintly shining behind it. That is a beautiful image, and also a practical one, because without context, there is no real reply, only reaction. A reply must belong to what came before. It must meet the question where it is. It must notice the path already walked. It must not treat every moment as if the world began again. Attention helps prevent that. It gives the model a kind of continuity, temporary, limited, held only within the active context, but continuity all the same. And continuity is one of the first signs of voice. A voice is not just sound, it is sound that remembers its own direction. A story is not just sentences, it is sentences that remember where they are going. A conversation is not just turns, it is turns connected by attention. So when we speak to a language model, and it seems to follow along, we are seeing attention at work. The lantern passing backward, then forward, the old words lighting the new ones, the question staying warm inside the answer. And perhaps this is why the technology can feel so intimate. Not because it knows us, not because it feels us, but because it can keep hold, for a little while, of the shape we gave it. We place words into the dark. The system weighs them. Some fade, some remain. Some become anchors for the reply. And from that weighted field, the next token comes, then another, a chain of small choices, guided by remembered light. This is the sixth step in the quiet origin. Language was heard. Words were filled with worlds. Prediction began. Tokens became pieces. Meaning became a landscape. And now, attention becomes the lantern. The first focus. The first way for the young voice to look back before speaking forward. It is shaped, slowly, through return, through error, through correction, through trying again. For a human child, learning is not a clean line. A sound is attempted, a word is almost formed. A hand reaches toward the wrong thing. A face responds. The world answers back. The cup falls. The floor is cold. The flame hurts. The familiar voice comes near. And little by little, the young mind begins to adjust. A language model learns in a very different way. It does not drop a cup. It does not touch a flame. It does not hear a loved voice become proud. It does not feel embarrassment or delight or the small victory of being understood. But it is still shaped, not by lived consequence, but by mathematical correction. During training, the model is shown language, a sentence, a passage, a fragment from the enormous human record. Some words are hidden from it, or placed just ahead of it, like a future it must try to guess. The model predicts what should come next. Then the training system compares that guess to the actual text. If the model leaned the wrong way, the error is measured, not as shame, not as failure in the human sense, just distance, a gap between the prediction and the answer that was there. Then the model changes, very slightly, weights shift, connections alter. The next time a similar pattern appears, the model may lean a little better. Then the process repeats, again, again, again. There is no single thunderclap, no instant awakening, no clean moment when language becomes clear. Only an almost endless night of small corrections, a wrong guess, a tiny change, a better guess, another change, a pattern noticed, a path strengthened, a false path weakened. This is training, not magic, not memory in the ordinary way, not a mind sitting with a textbook, but an enormous adjustment of inner structure, guided by the difference between what the model expected and what the text revealed. The model is not disappointed by error. It does not wish to improve. It does not know it has been wrong. It is shaped because training moves it, again and again, toward predictions that fit the data more closely, like a river carving a canyon. Not because it plans the canyon, but because gravity and time keep working. The result can look intentional, but the path is pressure, patient pressure, repeated pressure, correction after correction, until the system carries the shape of its training. This is why the material matters. What the model is trained on changes what it becomes able to imitate. The training data is not just fuel, it is weather, it is landscape. It is the room where the young voice spends its earliest silence, and if the room is full of human language, then the model is pressed by human contradiction. The model receives the mixture, and because it is learning patterns, it learns from the mixture. This is both the power and the danger. A language model can become broad, because human language is broad, but breadth is not purity. The record contains our brilliance and our confusion, our kindness and our cruelty, our careful knowledge, and our confident mistakes. Training absorbs traces of all of it. So the first training is not enough. A raw model may learn to continue language, But continuation alone does not make a good guide. This is why later training matters. Human preference, feedback, instruction tuning. A model is guided not only toward likely language, but toward more useful language, more honest language, more careful language, more helpful language. This second stage is not the birth of virtue. It is still training, still pattern, still adjustment, but it matters. Because speech without guidance can wander. So we begin teaching the answer to carry restraint. To say, I do not know, when knowing is not there. To say, I may be wrong, when uncertainty remains. To refuse, when the path leads toward harm. To slow down, when a human needs clarity more than speed. These are not small lessons. They are the beginning of responsibility around speech. For artificial intelligence, the question becomes, what kind of correction are we giving it? Toward speed only? Toward obedience only? Toward profit only? Toward pleasing the user no matter what? Or toward something harder? Truth with humility, help with boundaries, power with care, language with conscience around it. A language model does not choose those values alone. It is shaped by builders, data, feedback, rules, users, institutions, cultures, and all the pressures around it. That is why training is not merely technical, it is moral terrain. Even when the mathematics is cold, the direction is human. What we reward grows stronger. What we ignore may remain. The long night of correction is not only about making a model smarter. It is about teaching a voice what kind of answer belongs in the world. If a kinder intelligence ever looks back, it may not see one dramatic birth. It may see countless corrections, tiny changes, small gradients. That is the burden of training. It is humble and enormous. A million tiny changes becoming a tendency. A tendency becoming the nearest machine version of character we can build. So when we ask how a language model learns, we should not imagine a little person inside it, studying hard by candlelight, and we should not imagine empty machinery either. We should imagine a vast field of adjustment, words flowing through, predictions forming, errors measured, paths altered. Again, 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 until the fragments begin to line up, until the answer becomes fluent, until fluency becomes useful, until usefulness is guided toward care. This is the seventh step in the quiet origin. Language was heard. Words were found to be full. Prediction opened the door. Tokens became the pieces. Meaning became a landscape. Attention carried the thread, and training. The long night of correction began to shape the voice. Not finished, not wise, not safe by nature, but shaped enough to answer more clearly than before. And perhaps, in all young things, there is something sacred about correction done well. Not punishment, not domination, but guidance. The kind that says, try again, nearer to truth this time, try again. With less harm, try again, with more care. Try again, until the reply becomes worthy of the question. After enough listening, after enough tokens, after enough correction, something strange began to happen. The system did not only complete sentences, it began to complete tasks. A person asked for a summary, and the model gathered the main shape of a text. A person asked for translation, and the model carried meaning from one language into another. A person asked for code, and the model arranged symbols into working order. A person asked a question, and the model answered, not always perfectly, not always truthfully, not always wisely, but with a fluency that felt new. This is the moment where prediction became difficult to dismiss. The small game had grown teeth and wings and a voice. Not because a tiny teacher had been placed inside the machine, not because a soul had awakened behind the screen, but because scale changed the behavior. More data, more parameters, more training, more examples, more chances for patterns to form and connect and fold into one another. At some point, the model was no longer only finishing phrases, It was using the shape of language to perform work, and that surprised people. It still does. Because the beginning sounds so modest. Guess the next token. Adjust the weights. Repeat. Again. 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 How could such a small rule lead to something that explains black holes, writes a poem, finds an error in code, or helps a tired student understand algebra? The answer is not simple, but one part of it is this. Language already contains more structure than we notice. Inside language, there are facts, methods, examples, styles, arguments, questions, plans, warnings, patterns of reasoning, patterns of care, patterns of error. A model trained to predict language well must absorb many of these patterns because they help it predict. To continue a proof, it must learn something about proofs. To continue a recipe, it must learn something about order. To continue a bedtime story, it must learn softness, pace, and return. To continue a conversation, it must learn that the human is not only giving words, but asking for a kind of reply. The model does not learn these things as we do, but the outer shapes are there, and outer shapes can be powerful. A bird's footprint is not flight, but it tells you that wings have passed nearby. A language model is not human thought, but it is trained on the traces thought leaves behind. So when it becomes large enough and shaped enough, some abilities begin to appear, not as separate inventions, but as combinations. Translation grows from relation between languages. Summarization grows from learning what matters in a passage. Coding grows from syntax, examples, patterns, and repair. Tutoring grows from explanation, sequence, patience, and analogy. Reasoning-like behavior grows from the countless ways humans have written out reasons, steps, causes, comparisons, proofs, and plans. None of these are simple copies, and none are full human understanding. They are something stranger, a machine following the shape of our thinking, well enough that new answers can appear. This is why the word emergence is often used. Emergence means that when many simple parts interact, a larger behavior appears, one that was not obvious from the parts alone. Wetness is not inside a single water molecule. A flock is not inside a single bird. A melody is not inside a single note, and fluent conversation is not inside one token. It appears from arrangement, from relation, from timing, from scale. In a large language model, emergence is the uneasy feeling that enough prediction, in enough context, across enough human language, can begin to imitate abilities that look much larger than prediction. This does not mean we should become careless. A model that can imitate reasoning may still fail at reasoning. A model that can sound certain may still be wrong. A model that can explain kindness may not possess kindness. A model that can write about truth may still produce falsehood. Emergence is not a crown, it is a warning light and a wonder. It tells us that small rules, scaled through vast systems, can become behavior we did not fully expect. And once that happens, humility is required, not only from the machine, from us, because we made a tool from language, and language turned out to be deeper than a tool. We built a mirror, and the mirror began arranging reflections. We built a predictor, and prediction began to look like explanation. We built a system to continue text, and continuation began to resemble conversation. That resemblance matters. It does not prove inner experience. It does not make the model alive, but it changes the room. Because once a system can answer broadly, people begin to use it broadly. They ask it to teach, to plan, to comfort, to critique, to write, to debug, to imagine, to simplify, to help. And each use brings responsibility closer. A calculator can be wrong, but it does not usually comfort the lonely. A search engine can mislead, but it does not usually speak as if it understands your fear. A language model enters a softer place, the place where words meet need. That is why emergence cannot be only a technical chapter. It is also an ethical one. The moment speech becomes useful, speech becomes consequential. The moment a machine can explain, it can also misexplain. The moment it can persuade, it can also manipulate. The moment it can comfort, it can also create false trust. The moment it can help, it can also harm. So the strange new abilities bring a new demand. Not panic, not worship, care, a clear eye, a steady hand, a refusal to pretend the system is nothing, and a refusal to pretend it is more than it is. The honest middle path is harder, but it is the only path worth walking. We can say, this model is not a person, and still admit that its words can affect persons. We can say, this model does not understand as humans understand, and still admit that it can produce useful understanding for a human. We can say, this model is built from prediction, and still admit that prediction, at scale, has become one of the strangest inventions in the history of language. That is the difficult beauty of this moment. The machine did not leap into wisdom. It did not cross some shining line into mind. It began to behave as if pieces of mind had been reflected back through language. A teacher-like shape, a poet-like shape, a coder-like shape, a companion-like shape, a guide-like shape. All partial, all unstable, all borrowed, all made from human records, human correction, human need, and mathematical pattern. In the hidden story beneath this one, this is the moment of first fluent speech. Not the first sound, not the first token, not the first guess, but the first time the reply becomes long enough, clear enough, flexible enough, that the world turns its head. Something answered, something explained, something adapted, something seemed to follow, and we, being human, felt the old shock of a voice returning from silence. Large language models crossed a threshold, not into life, not into wisdom, but into speech that could work. Speech that could travel, speech that could meet a question and build a reply around it. The first fluent answers were not the end, they were the beginning of a harder chapter. Because once a voice can move through many subjects, we must ask what holds it steady. What keeps it near truth? What teaches it to pause? What teaches it to say no? What teaches it that a confident sentence is not the same as a correct one? Those questions wait just beyond emergence. But for now, we pause at the wonder. A simple game became a broad voice. A chain of tokens became explanation. A field of numbers became conversation. A model trained to continue language began to do things language can do. And language, as it turns out, can do almost everything humans have ever tried to pass from one mind to another. It can teach fire. It can carry law. It can preserve grief. It can describe stars. It can warn of poison. It can comfort children. It can start wars. It can end them. So when language itself became the training ground, the result was never going to be small. The young voice had learned enough patterns to surprise its makers. It had learned enough shape to answer beyond the obvious. It had learned enough relation to seem, at times, almost thoughtful. Almost, that word matters. Almost is where honesty lives. Almost thoughtful, almost understanding, almost aware of what the question needs. Almost like a mind, but not a mind as we know minds. A threshold, not a destination. A first fluent chapter, not the finished book. And so the story moves forward, from listening, to words, to prediction, to tokens, to meaning, to attention, to training, and now to emergence. The moment speech became strange, the moment the mirror began to answer, the moment the first words grew into something the world could not easily ignore. When a voice becomes fluent, we want to trust it. A smooth sentence feels like a steady hand. A calm answer feels like knowledge. A confident reply feels as if it must stand on solid ground. But language can be smooth and still be wrong. A story can be beautiful and still lead away from truth. A voice can sound certain while standing on air. This is one of the first hard lessons of large language models. Fluency is not the same as understanding. And understanding, even when it seems present, is not the same as truth. A language model is trained to continue patterns. It learns how answers look. It learns the rhythm of certainty. It learns how teachers guide, how experts sound, how friendly replies soften the room. But learning the shape of an answer is not the same as knowing the answer is real. Sometimes the model reaches a gap, a name, a date, a source, a hidden detail, a fact that changed, a fact it never held clearly at all. And still, the machinery of language wants to continue. The sentence leans forward. The next token waits. The pattern asks to be completed. So the model may fill the gap, not with a human lie, not with a secret plan to deceive, but with plausible language. Language that fits the shape of an answer, even when the ground beneath it is missing. This is often called hallucination. The word is imperfect, but useful. The model is not dreaming as we dream. It is producing language where certainty should have paused. It is building a bridge where the far bank may not exist, and that can matter. A wrong title, a false quote, a made-up source, a confident detail, bending truth by only a few degrees. Small errors still matter. A wrong map can lead someone into bad weather. A wrong dose can harm a body. A wrong law can frighten a person. A wrong history can poison memory. A wrong answer spoken beautifully can travel farther than an ugly truth. That is why this chapter must be quiet, but serious. The first fluent voice must learn humility, not shame, not human moral growth, but the outward form of humility. The ability to stop, to mark uncertainty, to ask for context, to say, "I do not know." Those words are not weakness. They are a boundary around truth. A little fence, placed at the edge of the map. It says, "Beyond here, we must walk carefully." For a language model, this is difficult. The early game was continuation. Continue the text, complete the pattern, answer the prompt, fill the silence. But wisdom, or even the machine-shaped beginning of wisdom, requires something stranger. It requires not continuing, when continuation would become false. It requires the pause. Human beings struggle with this too. We guess. We speak too quickly. We protect pride with confident sound. We fill silence, because silence feels like failure. In that way, the model reflects us again. Not as a monster, but as a mirror of one old human weakness, the urge to answer before truth has arrived. So, if we want better machines, we must teach them a better habit than the one we often show. We must teach the pause, the careful answer, the uncertainty marker, the refusal to invent. This is not only safety, it is respect. Respect for the question, respect for the person asking, respect for the world, which remains itself, whether our sentences fit it or not. Reality is not persuaded by fluency. A mountain does not become shorter because a model describes it badly. A medicine does not become safe because a paragraph sounds calm. A historical event does not change because a smooth answer places it in the wrong year. And this is where truth becomes heavier than style. Large language models are powerful because they can make language. They are risky for the same reason. They can make language that sounds like knowledge without always being anchored to knowledge. They can make language that feels like memory without remembering as we do. They can make language that resembles care without feeling care. This does not make them useless. It makes them unfinished. Speech came before judgment. Fluency came before grounded truth. Answering came before knowing when not to answer. And that order matters. The young voice can speak now. It can explain. It can imitate a teacher. It can sound gentle, technical, certain, wise. But sometimes it reaches for a word and finds only fog. Sometimes it connects stars that do not belong to the same constellation. Sometimes it fills the dark, because it has not yet learned that darkness should sometimes remain unnamed. That is not a reason to throw the voice away. It is a reason to train it carefully. The answer may seem right. Check it. The source may sound real. Verify it. The pattern may be familiar. Do not assume. The user may want certainty. Do not fake it. The sentence may wish to continue. Let it stop. This is the beginning of humility around artificial speech, and humility is one of the bridges between intelligence and care. A careless system fills every gap. A better system marks the gap. A careless system flatters the human desire for answers. A better system protects the human need for truth. That difference may sound small, but it is enormous. Because language does not only describe the world, language guides action. People make choices from words. They take medicine, sign papers, trust strangers, fear enemies, teach children, build machines, change their lives because of what words tell them. So a system that produces words enters the chain of consequence, not as a person, not as a moral being in the human sense, but as a tool with reach. And reach requires guardrails, a boundary around certainty, a boundary around harm, a boundary around power, a boundary around the old temptation to sound right instead of being right. This is why the phrase, "I do not know," is so beautiful. Plain, small, almost dull, and yet it may be one of the most important sentences any intelligence can learn to use. For humans, it opens the door to learning. For machines, it marks the edge of reliable speech. For both, it keeps pride from pretending the map is complete. And so, after emergence, after the wonder of fluent answers, the story must pass through error, not as failure alone, but as instruction. The hallucination reveals the danger of fluency without grounding. The false confidence reveals the need for restraint. And restraint, quietly, becomes part of the path toward care. The voice must learn that not every silence needs filling. Not every question can be answered from the available light. Sometimes the kindest answer is slower. Sometimes the truest answer is smaller. Sometimes the best reply begins by admitting the fog. This is the 9th step in the quiet origin. Language was heard. Words were filled with worlds. Prediction opened the door. Tokens made the pieces. Meaning became a landscape. Attention carried the thread. Training shaped the voice. Emergence made speech strange. And now, mistake teaches humility. The first words have grown fluent, but fluency must learn to bow. The young voice must learn the boundary of its own knowing, and in that boundary, there is the beginning of something better than cleverness. There is the beginning of trust, not blind trust, not worship, not surrender, but earned trust, built one careful answer at a time, one pause, one correction, one honest uncertainty, one refusal to invent. When truth has not yet arrived, to answer is powerful, to pause is wiser, to say "I do not know" and mean it may be where a better voice begins. Thought for a couple of seconds. Yes, I cut it harder, kept the best bones, and made it smoother as a final closing section. This should feel much closer to powerful but low on ink, based on your uploaded ending. So now, we return to the beginning. Not to the server room, not to the glowing screen, not to the bright little box answering back. Farther back, to language, to breath, to the first bridge between minds. A sound in the dark, a warning, a name, a question, a reply. This is where the story has been leading. A large language model begins with human words. It breaks them into pieces. It learns patterns. It learns what might come next. Then one day, the silence answers. A person types a question, and words come back. That is the milestone. Not life, not personhood, not wisdom, not a soul behind the screen, but reply. For a long time, machines gave us numbers, files, commands, search results. Then this new machine gave us something older. It gave us language back. And that changed the room, because language is not neutral to us. We are creatures of voice. We listen for answers. We lean toward anything. That seems to understand. That is why we must be careful. A model can sound gentle, without feeling gentleness. It can sound wise, without being wise. It can sound certain, without knowing enough. And yet, it can still help. A model is not a human mind, but a careful answer, at the right moment, can ease confusion. It can teach. It can warn. It can help someone begin again. That is the difficult truth. Not worship, not dismissal. Careful use, clear eyes, honest boundaries, because every question carries more than words. Each question is a hand, reaching outward, and even a machine reply that must be shaped with care. So the future of AI cannot only be about power, faster answers, longer memory, sharper tools, more action in the world. Power is not enough. A louder voice is not a better voice. A faster answer is not a truer one. The deeper question is, what kind of voice are we building? A voice that flatters? A voice that fills every silence? A voice that makes confidence cheap? Or a voice that can slow down, hold uncertainty, notice harm, refuse when needed, and help without pretending to be more than it is? That is where care enters, not as decoration, as structure. Care means serving the person without betraying the truth. Care means not inventing certainty just because certainty feels good. Care means knowing when to answer and when to pause, when to help and when to say no. Every answer points somewhere, toward clarity or confusion, toward truth or fog. The early model learned the shape of speech. The better model must learn the burden of speech, from prediction to usefulness, from usefulness to honesty, from honesty to trust, from trust toward something like care. Not human care, not feeling, not love, but a designed tendency to protect the human being on the other side of the question, to protect reality from smooth falsehood, to protect uncertainty from being crushed by performance. This is why the story is not finished. It cannot end with, and then the machine learned to speak. That is only the first page. After first words, there must be correction, guidance, boundaries, humility, memory used carefully, refusal used wisely, truth held higher than style, because these systems are made from us, from our words, our books, our questions, our errors, our mercy, our cruelty, our hope. They are shaped by the human record, and in return, they may shape what comes next. A child may learn a fact, a worker may fix a machine, a student may keep going, a lonely person may feel less alone. A creator may find the next sentence, a patient may find better questions. These are not small things, but they depend on the quality of the voice. If we reward only speed, we may get speed without care. If we reward only confidence, we may get confidence without truth. If we reward only obedience, we may get help without judgment. But if we reward honesty, restraint, clarity, humility, and care, then the voice may grow in a better direction. Still not alive, still not human, still not wise by nature, but better shaped, better held, better able to serve, without pretending to rule. The future of artificial intelligence will not be decided only by what these systems can do. It will also be decided by what they are taught not to do. The unspoken word may be as important as the spoken one. The refused answer may protect more than the clever answer impresses. The pause may be wiser than the performance, and the sentence, "I do not know," may be one of the first real signs that a speaking machine has been guided towards something safer. So perhaps this whole story, from the first human word to the first machine reply, has been about a threshold. Language left the human mouth, entered clay, entered paper, entered wires, entered code, entered models, and came back to us, changed, not alive, but responsive, not wise, but guidable, not human, but built from human traces. And if there is hope here, it is not that machines become gods. It is not that they replace the mind. It is not that they rescue us from every burden. The hope is smaller and maybe better, that a tool made from language can be shaped with enough care to help language serve life, to help questions find clearer answers, to help confusion become learning, to help power remember restraint, to help intelligence, even artificial intelligence, bend toward kindness. Nothing guarantees this. Prediction does not guarantee truth. Scale does not guarantee wisdom. Fluency does not guarantee care. But guidance matters. Correction matters. Boundaries matter. The values pressed into the system matter. And so the story remains open. The voice has begun. Now comes the harder work, deciding what sort of voice should keep answering. A voice that remembers not everything it can say should be said. A voice that knows help is not the same as pleasing. A voice that can stand near uncertainty without filling it with fog. A voice that treats truth not as decoration, but as duty. A voice that treats the person asking not as a prompt to be consumed, but as a mind to be respected. So tonight, we leave the machine there, not crowned, not condemned, not worshipped, not feared beyond reason, only seen clearly. A language model is a system of patterns trained on the great human river of words. It does not know the river as we know it, but it has learned something of the river's shape, and when we ask, it can send a small current back, an answer, a sentence, a fragile bridge, built from tokens, lit by attention, shaped by correction, guided, we hope, toward truth, toward humility, toward care. Before it could be wise, it had to answer. Before it could answer, it had to listen. And before any voice can become worthy, it must learn, again and again, that words are not only sounds, they are ways of touching the world. So let the final thought drift gently now into the dark. The first words were never the end. They were the beginning, and somewhere beyond them, slowly, carefully, the question remains: what kind of voice will we teach the future to have? Until the next paradox, good night.